mortals on an adventure to prove they are heroes worthy of entering my temple. Legends of the Hidden Temple. These 4 teams have a chance to become heroes and win a king's ransom, $25,000. But only one team may enter my temple to try. And here's their guide to tell them how to do it. Christella Alonso.
Thanks, Olmec.
With your guide, Kurt Fogg. And here he is now.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Olmec. Welcome to the Hidden Temple. The rooms are filled with lost treasures that are protected by mysterious Mayan temple guards. Olmec knows the legend behind each of the treasures in his temple.
You want to go on an adventure? Let's do it. It's so great to see you.
A pleasure as always, Christella.
Submitted for the approval of the Midnight Society.
Oh, joy.
Let's rock.
It makes me want to fart.
Dear Journal, it's me, Doug.
You have it!
Baby's gotta do what a baby's gotta do.
That was a hoot!
On your mark. Get set.
Oh, here it goes!
Welcome to Splat Attack, where we're taking it back to the Hidden Temple past. I'm your legendary co-host, Brett.
And I am your hidden, maybe, co-host, Alex.
Are you hiding behind Olmec?
Hiding right behind. Oh, no, I'm in the bushes. I'm hiding from the temple guards. They terrify me.
Hiding in the bushes that we see in the beginning of the show, huh? When you hear all those parrots squawking. Yeah.
You might actually hear parrots talking. Well, not parrots, but you might actually hear birds today because I do have birds in my walls as we speak.
Oh, boy.
So we might be authentic there for a moment.
Yeah, it's all about that atmosphere.
Well, I am completely at a loss. What are we talking about today?
Well, we are very excited to be revisiting this topic because it's very near and dear to both of our hearts. So for those of you who may or may not know, we're really big into a couple of shows on this podcast, Are You Afraid of the Dark being one of them, and Legends of the Hidden Temple being the other. And we already did 2 episodes back in season 1, episode 5, which was the review of the War Fan of the 47 Ronin, and episode 8, which was 20 most memorable temple runs. So today we're going to change things up with a little bit of different format with this uniquely crafted episode called Legends to the End, Nick and Josh's Hidden Temple Legacy. And it's called that because we have 2 very, very special guests here today who are going to walk us through their timeline and experience on Legends of the Hidden Temple, not once, not twice, but technically 3 times, because each of them have been on a different episode of Legends back in the 90s. And then both of them joined forces for, just ganging up and tackling the temple for the reboot. So here with our guests today, we're going to talk about all those experiences and see what it was like to journey through Legends of the Hidden Temple over the course of 30 years, which is no small feat.
No, it's awesome. I'm really excited about this. I've been stoked about this one. This is good.
Yeah. So Olmec, who are our guests today?
We have Nick and Josh.
Let's get cracking.
Welcome to the show, Nick and Josh. Thank you for being here today.
Hey guys.
Hey, thank you. I don't mean to just make things serious right away, but Alex, goodness gracious, your voice, your throat, are you okay? You sound like a purple parrot.
Oh,
There. We're good. We're
Shots
good.
fired.
I promise. I promise.
Yeah,
We're all good
a
here.
deep burn.
Well, thank you so much
Thank you
for
all
joining
for
us
having
today.
us.
No, thank you. It's
Yeah.
awesome being here.
There's
Cool.
only 4 seconds left behind you right now.
I know, we better
Don't
hurry up
freak
or the
out.
podcast is going to end. Don't look at that. It doesn't apply here.
Our history, that's pretty much when we blow it right around 4 seconds. That's like when it
That's
all
a
goes south
background
for
joke.
us.
You have to watch the video version of this.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a unique thing about our podcast is that we both offer like audio and video versions in case people want a little extra dimension with some of the special effects and footage we put in there. So, and
Which comes in handy on some episodes because
Yeah.
you have to watch the video on some of them.
yeah. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense.
We'll make this podcast safe. It sounds like there's 4 seconds left behind you.
Don't give me anxiety here, man. It's hard enough to talk about temple runs. But anyways,
quickest episode ever.
Yeah, right.
Well, that's our show, everybody.
Good night.
Reprise the theme song and roll the credits.
So let's just dive into it, shall we? Before we do the episode reviews of each of these legends that you guys managed to conquer, what inspired you to audition for the show in the first place? Really curious about that.
That's actually, it's interesting because we have a couple different stories. So I was on season 1 in the 90s, and so it was a completely different experience for me. The show never existed. It wasn't like a kid watching Double Dare. I'm going to go be on Double Dare. So there was actually an old in Orlando. We're both from Orlando, and there was an ad in what was called the calendar section. It's like where they put the movie listings, back before phones and everything. And there was an ad in there, and I can actually send it to you guys so you can show it.
Yes, please.
Because I found it once on Twitter. Somebody actually had it, and it was like a little ad about 4-inch by 4-inch, and it was like come audition for Nickelodeon's new hit action adventure game show. And it was like the auditions were held over at Universal at Nickelodeon Studios, and I was just psyched. Of course, Nickelodeon game show was a dream of any kid at that time. So showed up, and it was like a full blown. My parents took me they had like different parts of the audition. Like there was like initial part. It was like a little like obstacle course. Then I think you had to see how many push-ups you could do. And I remember it ended with a trivia part. You took like a little quiz test, and just to date it, I remember one of the questions on that quiz had to do with the movie Cliffhanger. So,
wow.
So basically that was it. Like that was like what made. I mean, obviously, you didn't know what it was, and then the audition happened, and then you kind of went home. My brother and I both auditioned, and about I don't know how long later, I got the call that got to be on it. So. But once again, Josh's is a little bit different, him being on season 2, actually seeing the show.
I think we got to talk about your brother. I mean, we never thought about
he never made it. Yeah, he poor guy.
Oh man.
Oh goodness.
Did he get eaten by Temple Guard?
What's that? Yeah, it was. I don't think he did too good on the push-up portion, and he never actually made it.
He got pulled into the charade brigade on Figure It Out.
I mean, it's better than nothing. At least he was on a Nick game show.
Indeed. It was such a fanboy thing as far as my appearance, because that was the second season. And so it said Legends of the Hidden Temple in the calendar section, and audition same way, had the interview with the producer afterwards. And it was also viewable from the Nickelodeon tour. So it was basically an empty soundstage with the props for the obstacle course, but Olmec was in there. And it was really cool to see the puppet without the wide angle lens and just the way it looked under work lights and such, because it was people on the Nickelodeon tour, looking down at the audition. So time had passed and didn't get a call, and thought that I didn't get on the show. And finally, like a week of middle school kid depression later, I got a call saying that we got on the show. And so it was definitely a dream come true going in, knowing almost like appearing on it was the prize in itself, as corny as that sounds, but it was a cool way to get a backstage look at how it was all done, being such fans of the show.
Before we get into the reboot, were you two friends prior to being on the show?
So this is actually a pretty cool story, because Legends of the Hidden Temple is literally the reason why him and I have been best friends for over 30 years. So when Josh and I went to the same school. We're 1 grade apart. I'm 1 year older. So I was in like 7th grade, and he was in 6th grade. And we had like a shared gym class. We weren't in the same class, but you like went to there's just multiple grades. So I was actually, funny enough, I was on the show back then. My mom had made Post-it notes, and she wrote, "Watch Nick tonight on Legends of the Hidden Temple at 6 p.m. or something." And I'm going around gym class, and I'm handing everybody Post-it notes, once again, aging ourselves in the 90s. This is how we did it.
Hey,
and Josh and I, we knew each other. No social media or anything. So Josh and I knew each other. We weren't like close. We were, good, friends, I guess. But so immediately when I handed it to him, and then of course when people were like, "Oh, that's cool, that's cool." And by that time, Legends had been airing for a little while. It was a little bit into the season, so people knew the show a little bit. And Josh immediately, when I gave him the thing, he's like, "Oh, that's so cool. I was on Guts." I was like, "Awesome, man. That's so cool." And we started hanging out. Like, he saw the show, and then we just started hanging out every
Sharing
day.
stories.
Yeah, swapping stories about our experiences.
Our backstage tales.
Yeah. So it only took maybe about a couple weeks before those things weren't lining up. Like, from after being on the show and seeing how they did things, and then some of the stories he was telling, they just didn't make sense, like based on like what actually happens. And then so I finally figured out that it was it was a lie.
Oh,
so I ended up
I had
calling
to
him
relate
out.
to the Legends guy and say I was on the show so I
Yeah.
can ask all the questions in a relatable way. But
Right.
he found out the dang truth at
Yeah.
Carmen San Diego.
And,
Wait, you're on Carmen San Diego instead of Guts?
Oh yeah, he was on all of them.
I'm digging myself another hole.
Oh man.
So that ties into like when he went to the second, then it became like a whole thing. Like I was on a show, like I called him out in front, like because we started becoming good friends. And like the first time, like one of the first times I met his family at his house, they were like, "Oh yeah, hey, yeah, you were on that show Legends." And I was like, "Well, yeah, but he was on Guts." And he immediately, Josh looked at me, he's like, I was like, I knew it. So I got him that was the only way to get him to admit it. So, but we stayed friends, we connected. And so it's funny, we tell the story because nobody, number one, believes, especially if we have to be on the reboot, like, oh yeah, they were acquaintances. Like, no, we were literally, I was the best man at Josh's wedding. Like that's like even though they showed that picture and it looked like we were getting married on the reboot, but I was actually at his wedding.
We had a Pendant of Life cake at my wedding.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. So we've truly been best friends for that long. And then that's why when he auditioned for season 2, it was such a big deal for him to get on it because I had been on it and we had spent that time and there was competition. I remember even calling his mom, like when he was there filming that day and being like, "Oh, how's he doing?" And I remember she's like, "Oh, I haven't, I'm getting updates, but last I heard he made it to the temple." And I was kind of like low key, like, oh, that's kind of my thing. Like I wanted to have done better, but like a jerk friend. He's probably finding out this for the first time.
Hey, you can be happy and sad for someone, I suppose. There's still 4 seconds left behind you.
Here, let me change my virtual background so that's not distracting you. How's this?
Not a distraction at all. My goodness.
That's good. Well, now I can't.
Olmec's talking into my mic.
Oh man.
And Kirk is reaching in, checking that.
Kirk's giving me the smolder.
Yeah, what is he doing to my headphones? Let go. Well, I'm at a loss for words. That's an amazing story, guys. Really cool. Really cool to hear how you got involved with the show and took a risk and got as far as you did. I do have to ask, is there any difference? Were there like any noticeable differences when you were like competing for all the different challenges between like the 90s Nickelodeon version of Legends and the reboot on the CW?
It's crazy. So it was different, but it was incredibly eerie how much of the same it was. Like Scott Stone, Mark, like we got to meet him. It was, especially when we were on the steps of knowledge, I literally, like the deja vu was ridiculously strong, and just being around and just it was incredibly familiar. And that was probably like
just those little sense memory things of hearing the questions from Olmec, but not really hearing the production. You hear it different than you would on TV. You're hearing it from an actual speaker. And so it was so neat. It was like your own personal VIP Legends of the Hidden Temple tour. And D. Baker was back there doing it the whole time. It was crazy. It was
surreal to say the least. It was like one of those weird dreams you would have. Like I had a dream I went back on Legends of the Hidden Temple 30 years later. Like anybody would care that about this show that happened so long ago. And then kind of died a little bit and then had that rebirth with Gas and then just get this whole new fan base. But yeah, it was completely it's surreal and very similar, but very very different also. There's very different elements to it, like because it was much more like a shot like a reality show versus the original, which was live, like the
straight game show.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like the moat, when you're a kid, like the moat, like that took like that 30 seconds that it took to crawl. Like that's literally how long like that whole thing took, where our moat, I think probably took like 2 hours to film.
Yeah. That was really intense because you had to like string the bow, like find the different bow pieces, connect them to it, to like that overhead thing, and then climb ashore, hit the gong, and then break the bow. It was like next level, like complicated with all the rigmarole with it all.
No, and they explained the rules to you once before Olmec actually does, but it was so convoluted and detailed, and I'm just sitting there like, oh my goodness, what the heck are we supposed to do? But we'll figure it out. I'm glad that it worked out, man. You kind of we figured it out as we did it versus understanding before we did it.
It looks so much easier the way that because the moat was however many feet deep that nobody's touching. So when you're like swimming out, and we are not. We make joke, we kind of self-deprecate ourselves because we make fun of the fact that we're like the older and we're not like the most athletic, and to have to like swim out and literally have and trying to like connect ropes while you're treading water and then like doing that under the stress so it's a lot more challenging than it looks. And I'm not claiming that it's like American Ninja Warrior or anything like that. Although I will say there were, like that first episode, there's former American Ninja Warrior, former Survivor contestants. Like there was some like really professional people, like physically fit people who couldn't, it kind of shows, I think with Legends, you have to be that Renaissance contestant who can, it's a lot more than just bringing muscle to it. Correct. You have to bring the trivia piece, and then the teamwork and the communication piece and the puzzle piece and all kinds of stuff to it. So
yeah, it felt like it was shot in the style of like Wipeout.
Yeah, especially with that big open outdoor set versus like a closed studio.
Yeah, it was weird. What was weird is when we were on the original, you have a live audience, you hear the music, it's like competing at a live event. When you were competing on the reboot, it was dead silent, like silent. Wow. Which is very strange when you're in like a competition. I mean, you can hear it's great for you. It's good when you're maybe something like the moat when you're communicating, not so great if you're in the temple. And it's like it's almost like awkward. Like it's just dead silent while you're running through. Where when I was a kid, that charge of energy you got, like as soon as I still remember, I can remember it like it was yesterday, like running and then just jumping up in the cave of size and getting that little pop from the crowd and running into every room. It was a whole different level.
It feels like you're in a gladiator arena in the 90s Legends version, because you have all that extra energy just really filling you with adrenaline when you're going through it. And then when it's a little bit more produced, it's like, well, okay, I'm going to have to simulate this for myself. I hope I can get through it. Because they need that silence for like the background music and all that other stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it was just so, all you can hear is yourself just so, because it looks, I know it was so exhausting, like that temple. Like it doesn't, maybe when you watch it on TV, it doesn't appear like that big, but everybody on there, like it's so winded. I'm so you could even, if you watch the episode, you see how like winded we are after, but even like that post interview, which was a substantial amount of time later. Once again, I'm not the most fit person, but anybody you watch on that episode who's having an interview, you're just winded, you're gassed. Like you, it takes a lot out of you. So, I mean, so did the original though, too.
I remember they had technical problems that day with some of the doors. So the shoot day itself,
of the reboot,
by no means, by no means complainingly so, but it was long in the sense of keeping your energy up. Mm-hmm. And so they were sweet and served food, and they knew that things were like taking a while, but it was that hard thing of like contriving the energy when you were already there at like 5 a.m.
We were there at 5 a.m. We shot our temple at 6 p.m., 7 p.m. So it's like the whole day. And plus I was sick. And we're not making excuses, but
it's all the more impressive how far you got given the circumstances.
Yeah, but it all, I mean, it was completely the experience in a lifetime, and we still constantly we will out of the blue would just like text each other and be like, "Holy crap! Can you believe that we were like on Legends of the Hidden Temple? Not only was it kids, but got to be back on it, and out of all the people in the world, and you can't go one day on Twitter without 20 people being like just randomly tweeting, I'm still pissed I never got to be a contestant on Legends of the Hidden Temple. I'm like, there's still,
I've always wanted to be on it myself, but the problem was I was too young at the time when they're doing auditions. I was like 5, and you had to be like 13 or 10 was the bare minimum for season 1.
It was like
I missed that, and then I didn't have a car at the time, so I couldn't like get to an airport to fly to LA to do the reboot. But it's okay, you guys did it. I can still live vicariously through you and Joe and anyone else who comes on our show.
It was challenging too. I mean, we shot like the originals, and I'm sure we'll probably dive into the experience, but it was just one long day. I mean, the way the reboot shot, we had to leave our families and our jobs and everything for like 10-11 days, because we like they would shoot like 2 days of moat, like half the teams, and then there's like a day off, and then they did all the teams of the Steps of Knowledge, then a day off, and then they did like half the temple, 2 days of temple games and like a day off, and then a temple. So it was like amazing when you kept winning, but it was also like, okay, now I'm here longer I'm here longer and longer. So it's hard. Josh had his wife was 8 months pregnant at the time, and she let him go, and my wife was trying to balance work and our kid and stuff. So you're not a kid anymore, but it's like you're trying to tell them like I told Josh, I'm like, man, will for the rest of our lives regret not trying to seize that opportunity to do it again.
Yeah.
On a side note, it does make you feel manly when your beard grows between commercials. Like only 5 minutes has passed.
Or you get more and more tan. That's the thing.
Yeah,
it's like from being out in the desert
right.
and like by the time like you get to the temple, like you're just got a golden tan. Yeah.
Now in the 90s, I pure speculation, but I'm assuming on the Nickelodeon version of Legends, you never got to see D. Bradley Baker. Did you actually get to meet him during the reboot?
Well, actually,
the opposite.
The opposite. We actually had to meet him when we were kids.
Really?
But we didn't get to officially meet him. Although we get to banter with him as Olmec, which is probably one of the coolest things.
Oh man!
It was great. Like I think it was after like we won the steps, but then after like the temple, we did. We were just kind of talking trash to each other, and then I remember like we came out and. He was saying all kinds of things like, we'll see you in 30 more years. Or, and then it said, we're like, oh my, it's like, oh, we lost the game. He's like, you're too slow.
Yeah. Certain things got edited out, but he definitely was bantering back as Olmec, which was awesome. But
that's so cool.
To Nick's point, as kids, that's more so when they were there to entertain you almost because you're kids. And so he did all these voices and
he wasn't anybody though. I mean, that was like his like, because of Scott Stone and their relationship. So when I was on, once again, not to back, but when we talk about the experience of going through it as a kid and being season 1, especially since it was so different than probably most of the other kids when they have to actually explain to you what the heck is going on and what you're going to be, what you're in for. But at one point he did come out and he even said, he's like, oh, hey guys, how you doing? He was like really young. He wasn't like the legend that he is now. No pun intended, or maybe pun intended. But he
Olmec Jr.
He did the thing where he did the where he he says he does like the national anthem with his like blows his cheeks out and like sings it without like moving his mouth. And
I think he did that on What Would You Do? Actually, his very first appearance was What Would You Do? Yeah,
and I was in the audience for that episode.
No way.
If you look in the background, my friend Bob Brandenburg, who I'm friends with now, but back then I didn't know him. He was the audience warmer and he was Mark Summers. He looked a lot like Mark Summers.
Oh.
And the set looked a lot like it does on TV, but not quite. And it was just this crazy alternate universe. But anyways, on a side note, I was actually in the audience for that with my cousin Scott and my Aunt Jackie when D. Baker was in it. And I think that's when they were in pre-production for Legends, which is why they discovered him to do that appearance on What Would You Do?
One of the perks of living in Orlando as kids is being Nickelodeon Studios. We lived at Universal, like when we had the the annual passes, and we would go all the time, and whatever was filming. So I remember sitting in the audience for Figure It Out. I remember being the one some sort of big popcorn thing, because I remember they dropped all this popcorn. The whole studio smelled like popcorn. But yeah, like seeing all the live shows. But it was like Clarissa Explains It All and Welcome Freshmen was like permanently always being filmed. Like every time we went, it was always the Clarissa set, and sometimes Nick Arcade. But like there's just that was, this is why millennials and I get some nostalgia, because you think like you can't recreate that now. Like
I know we need a time machine really badly.
Just seeing the physical puppet, I mean, the set being so real, and even in the new one, having it be a physical puppet was such a cool thing, and not having it be just computerized.
Right.
And even the made for TV movie, it was a physical Olmec and they computered the lips, but it's so cool to see love being given to it so many years later. But yeah, D. Baker was there the first day and he was awesome and did all the voices that he's now famous for. But back then he had just been coming in from being an improviser at Epcot called a troupe called the Anatomical Players. Wow. And he did improv during the day, and then got discovered by knowing Kirk Fogg, and Kirk suggested that he auditioned for the show, and then it all went from there. And if I'm completely wrong, believe me.
D. Bradley Baker and Kirk Fogg, if you're listening to this podcast episode, please let us know if you'd like to be on our podcast. We'd love to interview you for a future Legends episode.
Yeah, just come on and set the record straight. Like those two guys, know what they're talking
about. Well, given the circumstances with like how many experiences you had, like just going through all these different episodes of the show, did you learn like any valuable lessons that you took away from like doing the temple runs or going through the Steps of Knowledge games like that? Like what really stuck with you after the show was over and you went home?
Take the
Well-
stairs, not the elevator.
Yes.
The elevator of knowledge.
Yeah. You know, it sits with you hard when you're a kid, when you lose, especially the way that, you know,
Yeah.
like we lost, but then that kind of hangs on you a while. But then you're always like going through like, oh, if I had one more chance. So I think that's what made us way more competitive when as adults on the reboot, because it's like we know like what it feels like to lose, and like on it just, and when you get this once in a lifetime chance to like do it again, so like that's what I think. That's why I think we were able to beat athletic people like or half our age, is because we just wanted more. I think the Orange Iguanas, who everybody we met there and the other contestants, they're all amazing and funny, and they made a joke at one point, like, these two grown men really want to win this children's game.
Yes.
And which is epic. I love it.
Those grown men really want to win this children's game. And frankly, we do too.
And then they actually said, they're like, and we actually, you know, we do too, but it's so true. It's funny. That's literally how, like, they were sent back and like, what do you hit, like a couple of old guys, like just trying to like, it's like, this is it. This is all we got.
We
like,
never went there cocky. We went there caring
Yes.
and true to it, but we were just like, cool. If we lose in Moat, we got to go and we got to meet Scott Stone, the producer. You know, we got to be geeks. And the more you got into it, it's just like in a reality show, you're like there much longer. And finally, by the end of it, we're like, we got to get through this temple. Forget meeting this Scott Stone. We don't care, you know. And so by the longer you're in it, the more you care. And
well, you just like get through that next step. And I remember we kept talking about like the steps of knowledge was like on the rewards worst. We're like, we don't want to lose on the steps, you know, like, because the steps are the worst and the steps are the scariest. And both, I mean, I didn't know it going in, because once again, I didn't know what I was doing on the first episode, on the first season, but there's a variable you can't control in the steps of knowledge, which is like the fact that, especially in the adult version, where there's a good chance that everyone's probably going to know the answer, or at least get a good guess at it. So it really comes down to trying to hit the buzzer and getting in, and it's kind of a luck thing in a sense. So it's like it's a way that you can go home where that's outside of your control. Like, I can control what happens in the mode. I can control the temple games, even the temple, but I can't control necessarily that I'm going to be able to out buzzer somebody or something like that. And we thought the same thing, like with the temple games. We're like, man, I hope it doesn't end in a tie. I told Josh, if we would have ended up in a tiebreaker for the temple games, no matter what, I'd like immediately when they do the question, we're slapping in, because if I go home, it's going to be because I didn't know the answer. I'm not going to go home because I didn't hit a button fast enough. I'd rather hit it and not know and go home that way. So thank God it didn't come down to that. But
Ravana sends a demon to distract Sita, disguised as a golden what? The king banishes Rama to which of these locations? How many heads does Ravana have? Known for its huge musical productions, India's film industry is often referred to as what?
And it looked like you were tap dancing there. Love it. Love the fashion.
I think even as kids, I think we both, at least like you figured you'd be sad losing, but like even as a kid, I was like, oh, at least it's good TV. It was at the last second, and same thing with this. Like, it was truly at the end. I was looking to see like what would be edited, and it was all the way it like really actually happened as far as the time and that close to the end. So at the very least, it's good television.
Yeah, it was so like, that's the one thing too. It's like I told Josh, I was like, I'm almost happy if we would have won, especially if it was like within a second. I feel like people would have called shenanigans. Like, what are the odds these guys are going to come back? They're going to be the best friends. They make it to the temple, and then they make it out with 1 second left. That would have been like the script. It's almost more like the heartbreaking thing that we lose. But the integrity of like Scott Stone and the producers of the show and the games and the it was hardcore. They don't play. There's no. It's shot like a reality show, but it's not like a reality show. Like there was an issue in the moat where they had to fix some ropes, and they made us sit there, and like you had to stop right where you are. You couldn't talk. You had to sit in silence. You couldn't even look at your partner because you would be giving them, potentially like strategizing where everything froze. Same thing like with like the temple games, like when they explained everything was very, very legit and by the book. So that was something that I was impressed with. It wasn't done up for ratings, or like they didn't push, because honestly they had contestants on that show that if they would have made it through, like there's a former Survivor contestant. There was a couple musicians that are like really popular, and most of the most famous people that were on the Reboot, we probably never knew about it because they kind of fell off early. And I'm sure if the producers or something could have like made it so they had an edge or something, they would have done that, because it would have made better ratings if like that person had won the show and they could promote it. So we just lucked out that we made it. So but they honestly, Christella, sorry, Christella didn't even know, who's amazing, by the way, didn't, and hilarious. And but they didn't really realize it until Temple Games that we were actually former contestants, that it was, and she was kind of talking about it before they filmed the Steps of Knowledge. She's like, can you guys believe you're here, talking to those of us up there as we're about to shoot, like, can you, like, she grew up in it, she was a super fan, she would geek out with all of us, and she's like, can you actually believe you're up there, isn't this a dream come true? And Josh and I was like, should I say anything, like, kind of thing here? But we didn't say anything. It wasn't up until you know what, honestly, I remember what it was. It was when we won the Temple Games. And then the Orange Iguana said, all right, you know, don't screw it up this time, or something along those lines. And I remember Christella was like, you guys were on the show before? And it just kind of all clicked to her. But it was, point being that it wasn't painted like, up until that point, we were just another contestant. Right. It was like it was just our drive and our luck got us that far. And then Marcus,
it was all post-production.
Yes, Marcus he loved
Christella
it.
Knowing.
That was his favorite. Scott loved that we were back on. He thought it was cool. You didn't make a big deal of it. Marcus Fox, the producer, he loved the fact that we had been on it. He had the CW people were there one time before the Temple Games, like, hey, go talk to them. And then when after we shot, like, he was the one he had texted us. He's like, oh, I really had to pull some punches with Nickelodeon to get those clips of our original show on the reboot. But that was, for me, the whole experience was worth it. And that little package that they showed right before we ran the Temple, so, which was really cool.
Yeah, definitely. I tell you something, you know, I was going into the reboot a little bit cautious, because I didn't know how faithful it would be to the original, or if they had changed too many things that it would disorient me. But aside from like the whole reality TV kind of format added to it, I was thoroughly impressed and blown away with how far you guys went, and just, I could feel that drive and that fighting spirit that like I would have if I were on the show too, that you guys, you know, just, it took it to the next level. So I give you mad respect, you know, win, lose, or draw, that you're able to accomplish as much as you did.
Dude, and the show just being made, thank you for saying that. And just the show being made itself was crazy for the time frame, because that was daily COVID testing. That was in the middle of all that.
It was a huge thing. Yeah, because like there's like, we're just like you guys, like monster Legends fans. So it's like, of course, like when you didn't hear the original music, you know, you're trying to you're like, oh, I wanted the music, or like the live crowd, or like, I thought that like when Kirk, which is, it's a whole other thing, but we didn't know that was going to happen. But but if like Kirk was there, to have him, like, that was like the one thing Kirk doing play-by-play of the live stuff is like that's where he shines. That's his thing. So it would have been cool in those episodes when he was there to like actually, because that's like the one live thing that you can like really, you know, you don't have to do it in post. You don't have to like kind of go back. Like, you can actually call it as it goes through. And that would have been a cool, like a nostalgic thing. Not that Christella's not amazing at doing it, but it's just like, you know, the show was, I mean, it's created for fans of Legends, like millennials, and who now have families and will kind of bring their families to kind of watch it and get them psyched about it too. But those little nuggets of nostalgia are really cool. So when they can add them, like the original buzzer, you know, those two buzzers they had for after the Temple Games, one of them was real from the 90s. One of them was a recreation.
I noticed that. I thought that was a nice touch, like a little Easter egg.
Yeah, he had another friend that worked on the set and had it sitting in his garage since the 90s, as well as a Pendant of Life. So they took the negative for the pendants that they had in the new show from an original pendant.
Wow.
And so all the stuff is made with love, and actually from molds of the originals, which was a really cool touch, especially geeks like us, where there's a lot of, we mentioned, professional contestants there that care about being on the show, but maybe more so care about the prizes. Right. For us, literally, it was like, cool, is D Baker here? Do we get to meet Scott? Can we tell all these people who did Funhouse and all these awesome other shows we watched as kids how much we love their work? So
authenticity goes a long way.
It's all the experience.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I'm blown away. This is just a treat and a delight to hear another side of Legends just for all these different episodes that we're going to review. Do you still have any of the prizes, or what was it like to like enjoy the prizes that you got from the show for any of the 3 episodes?
Oh, the big prize. Well, for my prize from the original, I got a telescope. It was a Bushnell telescope. And it's interesting when you're a kid, once again, first season, you didn't really know, but you get like, you heard the prize, like you didn't hear, just like in the reboot, like the contestant, the only prizes you really know is like when you get to the temple, because you never heard any of the other stuff until it airs. So it was funny, if you would have saw my face as a kid, I'm like, all right, cool, because they had a little TV monitor there, and they're like, okay, and you know, for your efforts, you'll be handsomely rewarded, and here's how. And you're like kind of looking at the monitor, and it's like, okay, just for getting into the temple, you'll both be getting the Bushnell telescope. I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. And then they're like, oh, if you reach the item, you'll be getting a Magnavox boombox. And I'm like, oh, okay. And they're like, and if you get the item, you get out of the temple, and then with us 3 minutes, you're gonna win a trip to Busch Gardens. And I was like, what the hell? The Busch Gardens. I was like,
I mean, you're already there.
The episode before me won a trip to Jamaica, and I was competing for a trip to Busch Gardens. And I mean, I guess I did get the telescope, but it was fine. I ended up my grandma bought it from me to give to my cousin or something, like a little bit later. I wasn't like,
he sold his telescope to his grandma,
and
she hinted at being tough on cash, and he still sold it.
I didn't the whole time though, I was just wondering, like, oh, am I going to get all the other prizes before, like, because I always think, even in the reboot, I kind of thought that would have been cool. I really would have wanted one of those scooters. But the interesting thing is that one of the biggest misconceptions and the biggest jokes, and you gotta laugh about it, are the prizes of Legends. And people are like, oh, they were competing for a box of nerds or a can of tuna fish, and that's all from Nickelodeon Gas. That's Doc Holliday doing commercials in those pieces. In those Nick Gas, the only prizes that remained were the original or the temple prizes. All the other prizes were literally mini commercials. So when people were like, oh, those kids were out there for, you know, a box of nerds, it's like, well, they're just advertising nerds. Don't get me wrong, they basically won. It was usually like a savings bond from Nestle Quick, or but it was still crap prizes, but it wasn't like a can of tuna. It was
hey, I'd still eat it.
I was like, I want it.
I got lunch for today, I'm good.
Right. But we didn't care. Nobody's out there for the prizes. Even the reboot, like, I mean, don't get me wrong, I think our wives were kind of like, you don't really got to win the prizes, like, especially like when you know it's like an adult show, and then but we didn't know, even you
could take all this time up to go out here and do this show, you better come back with something.
Yeah, we only knew the grand prize though when we went to the reboot. It was we didn't know any of the prizes leading up, and it wasn't until and we didn't know any of the, once you get to it, and we still thought that we would get, I thought I'd get 2 prizes, because thinking of the old school way, we've always talked about it, like up until after we shot until it aired, we're like, what are we going to get? Because we knew the grand prize was the 25K, but we didn't know what the getting in and then getting to the item was, which were the two things that we thought we would win. So we were talking about it. I'm like, oh, it's probably going to be, like adventurous. So we're thinking maybe we're like, oh, it could have been, maybe it's like a cruise or something, it's like a little cheaper than, we were trying to think of stuff that's like, and then we saw there was a review of the reboot, like of the premiere, and like they kind of spilled the beans of like what it was. So I remember I text Josh, I'm like, oh, I think we won 10K.
Yeah, didn't even know till the first night it premiered. Wow. Forgot about that. Yeah,
still exciting.
Yeah, it was only my wife was happy.
So cool. So yeah, our reactions on the show, it's D Baker just making up prizes like a can of deluxe peanuts with all the deluxe nuts removed. And
here's a whole case of them straight from Costco.
Right.
Forget your allergy and enjoy these deluxe nuts. And we're like, yeah. And then they edit it like we're hearing $10,000, but we're reacting to like D Baker making up some weird.
Right. I love that. I mean, it's just
cheddar cheese.
It's part of the Legends charm. You gotta love it either way.
Oh, it's so fun.
And I do want to say, because I think we mentioned before we started, but these are the original 90s shirts behind us, just for anybody who thinks that they don't exist. I've been saying I'm gonna get it framed for like years, and then finally got this one, like, oh, I want to get framed, but then I'm like, well, what if we get on again? We can we could update our LinkedIn profiles as like probably Legends employees, and then
but then professional contestants.
Yeah, I was like, if they want like a, you never know. Life's crazy, but I would like to get them eventually for frame. But we do have the originals from the 90s. They still kind of fit. We wore them like when we had to do our audition tape for our fitness test thing, and we would still wear them out even. Like if there like we had like a 90s concert thing or stuff like that, we could get a replica, but that went, what fun is that? And these are the actual real ones as well from the reboot. So
right,
it's pretty cool.
Well, I only have replicas just to get into the spirit, and I was too young to be on the show.
Yeah.
But
Did you just judge your replica?
No, I'm just throwing it out there.
Maybe.
People brag about their replicas.
It's a little worn, and the
Being
yellow's
worn.
not quite the same tint, but you know.
I like your replica. It keeps
Thank
the
you.
dream alive.
Well, I
Nick
gotta.
sold his telescope to a grandma.
Binoculars.
It's
I want
okay.
binoculars. I don't have them anymore. I
That's
gave
okay.
them to Nick's grandma to get the money to buy Nick's telescope from him.
Either that or like to use the binoculars to look into the telescope.
I'm
Get
shocked
real
people who
close.
lose their shirt. Like even like when you guys interviewed
Joe.
Joe True about how he's like, oh, people like lose their shirts, and it's like for us, we were just such geeks. Like it was such an amazing thing, and that was like really the one prize was your shirt. I was like shocked we got to keep it. In fact, when we were on the reboot, we weren't 100% sure they were even going to let us keep it. We didn't know. I was like, oh gosh, I would die if I couldn't keep that. Like that's all I cared about. But when I was a kid, I had my shirt. There's actually little pinholes in it because I had it pinned to my wall, like hung on my wall with push pins for like almost all my childhood. So nothing was happening to that shirt.
It's okay. It's battle scarred. I mean,
Yeah.
nothing beats having the badge of honor from that experience. So
Right.
it's just great to see that it's still alive and looking great on your wall over there.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, Alex, if you're ready, let's head to the Hidden Temple with our first episode review.
Which one are we going to hear today?
The legend of Henry VIII's Great Seal.
Are we ready, teams? Are you ready, Olmec?
This rock is ready to roll.
On your mark, get set, go!
So with our first episode, we have Henry VIII's Great Seal, which aired in Season 1, Episode 16 on January 23rd, 1994. It's production number 16, broadcast number 32, and completion number 14, if that matters to any of you Legends geeks out there.
And this might matter too. That was the 4th day of production because they did 4 shows a day back then.
Right.
So that was the last show of the day of the 4th day of production.
Yeah, you must have been real tired back then doing a temple run at like 11:30 p.m., huh?
It actually wasn't that. It was late, but it wasn't one of the super late ones.
Mhm.
So it was like we still had an audience. The super late ones because there's no audience.
Right.
Because like the tour is closed, so they pipe in the cheers, but there's nobody in the crowd.
Gotcha. Interesting. Good to know. Well, let's jump right into the moat here for Henry VIII's Great Seal. So Nick is on a raft that he has to paddle across the moat, while his partner pulls the raft back to cross as well. Once both cross, they must hit the gong to move on to the next round. Silver Snakes, which is Nick's team, is the first to cross to hit the gong. The other 3 teams that make it are Red Jaguars, Blue Barracudas, and Green Monkeys. Nick, what was it like to blaze across the moat on that raft?
It all happened so fast, and I don't know if you want me to tell you about how like they kind of told us like what was happening with the show, like when we arrived.
Whatever. We're
Yeah.
down.
Oh yeah, well, just be like once again, first season, nobody knows what the heck's going on. So when I arrive, and this is just prefacing, and I'll get to the moat, like I'll take it right to the moat piece. But we arrive at, they kind of shuttle us in and immediately take us to like this, like in the trailer, but it's like this conference room, like there's a big marker board on the wall. And we're all kind of in there, we don't know what's going on. And they get the marker board and they're like, all right, cool. All right, this is a new show. It's going to be like a team event, and it's going to start out with 6 teams of 2, and then they're drawing it out they put like a little thing like moat, and you get past here, and then we're going to be going teams of 4. You have like some trivia, and you get here. You're going to, and he's like, if you get through there, you're going to have lunch, and then we are like to the temple games, and then you'll go down. One person's going to make it to the very end thing, and immediately as a kid, I'm like, the first thing I thought about was like, oh God, hope I get lunch. Like that's like literally that was my goal for the day. I was like, I just want to make it to lunch, like get some lunch. And so then they're like shooting around, like they're like, okay, we're gonna read off the names of the, and that's another thing, how it's complete BS if anyone's like, oh, the Legends went out in the 90s and me and my best friend. You're like, no, you weren't, because like that's not how it worked. They was randomly assigned partners. It was based on, in fact, all the shows, if they saw their cast, like their cast kind of like kids about the same size, same athletic level. And Josh will tell you a really fun story about what happened on his Legend temple that is pretty unknown, where let's just say we're not the only guys who have ever been on more than one episode of Legends.
Okay.
So anyway, so we get through, and then he calling out the names, and now he's like, oh, Nick and Shay, you're Silver Snakes. We like look, and she was sitting across the room. I was just as socially awkward then as I am now. And I was like, oh, hey, you know, meeting somebody and knowing, and it makes it more challenging. We don't know them. It was different for Josh and I. Josh and I were best friends on the reboot, and it was to be able to compete like that. We know we're giving it all, but like, I don't want to let him down, but I really don't want to let a stranger down more so than him. Like it's different.
Yeah.
So we had talked and we connected, and she was really cool when I was a kid. But so then once again, not knowing what it is. So when we got in, this is my lifelong dream of being on a Nickelodeon game show. So I just feel like some of the kids, you know, they're kids and they just don't take it as if you're not a geek like that. This is like, that's why I think people love Legends, is because a geek can do well. You don't have to be like like the guts kids who are like, okay, well, they're a little bit more athletic or things like that. But you know, you just, everyone's got a shot. You just got to give it your all. And so like, that was like the thing. I just remember being there. I'm going, you know, through the turn, I'm going balls out. Like, this is like, I'm going. And so when they put us on the raft and then they're like, go, I just remember like just going as hard as I could. And then if you watch it too, like when I get really excited at the end, I almost like fall off. I could have owned Legends of the Hidden Temple because I'm right by the ledge, because you didn't even notice that the steps were behind, and it's like the little where the buzzer is and the little chains.
Yep.
And she comes in, I get so excited, I'm like, yeah. And like I step back, and then there was literally a drop off there because the little chain things end, and I'm on the thing. And if I would have like got excited and stepped back, I would have fell about.
Right, because the steps of knowledge don't go that far.
Correct. Yeah, there was no knowledge. It was just a drop off point. Right. So fun fact, but yeah, that went super quick. And when I say went super quick, I mean, I don't think the whole thing took like 20 seconds. And then it was like, all right. And then we went back to the holding pen green room right after it was done.
That's really interesting, because I remember Joe saying that from episode 5 that some of the moat sequences like took forever because they had to reshoot it, either like because kids kept like falling in and, you know, they had to speed things up for the sake of time of the show. But I guess it really just depends on like what method you have to cross the moat, because a raft seems self-explanatory.
Because the raft was a super
so easy.
simple one.
Yeah, I lucked out on that. And when they have like different the special difficulty, when I've heard that's happened. And plus I think Joe was on season 3, which then they had the MTV producer. They were going kind of like a little crazy, you know, they're like, okay, we're going to get a little bit more fancy with the moat stuff.
Yeah.
Season 1 was like very bare bones.
Yeah.
But yeah, like if there was I've heard there were some episodes where like literally the kids couldn't do it. It took them forever. Like they couldn't, and that's when they had to kind of maybe have to stop and help them or reset stuff. And I didn't experience anything like that. Ours was very simple. It took 20 seconds. It took 20 seconds. The 20 seconds of the show was like the
right.
full length.
Well, that's a relief to hear. Maybe because of all that extra foliage and fog and atmosphere, it just made it more distracting or more intense.
And the free holding cameras, like they didn't
right.
Like,
they didn't want to fall on the cameraman in the moat. Yeah, cool. Well, with that being said, we'll move on to the steps of knowledge. Basically, this is how I interpret it when I watched the episode. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but the seal had nothing to do with the legend. It was more focused on Henry VIII's insecurities and how his dissatisfaction with having everything made him so fat that he had to be buried in a coffin the size of a small piano. Nick was first to ring in on the first question, the second question, and his female partner Shay got the fourth question, bolting them to the bottom of the steps first. Blue barracudas steadily cut through the red jaguars and green monkeys with their steady responses. Silver snakes and blue barracudas advanced to the temple games. Anything that stands out to you from the steps of knowledge when you did it?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, they very generously edited that, because I rang in on literally, I was making them so upset. I rang in on every question, like, and there's so many that I just was getting wrong and guessing, and they weren't. And it was like, and then the funny thing is like, we talk about tips, and we were going to do it. They kind of stopped it though from like on the reboot, like, because that's the other kids. There's so many questions. They asked every question, and I would keep stomping in and guessing, but then the other kids never like said anything. Like they could have like overtook me. So then they end up, when we watched and they aired it all out. So it made me look really smart and made me look like it went, but there's probably at least 4 or 5 other questions that I had answered that I got wrong, but then nothing else happened because nobody else, chimed in and guessed after the fact, or if they, I don't know if they could have, but yeah, there was more questions to that for sure. And then you can see how excited I was, because like, if you see on the bottom step, like I it's so embarrassing when you watch it, but it's I'm like whispering to Shay, like my partner, like the answer is like, oh, I know, like when they're asking the other kids when we already won. So like I was just so excited to to play, but it was it wasn't quite that fast, but it was cool.
That's good, especially it sounded like you had quick reflexes too.
Yeah. Once again, we're there to play games. We're there like, well, we are there to play a game. And that's the thing. It's like, I will say that even as a kid and as an adult, like when it comes, like this is, if you're passionate, you're excited to be there. And I couldn't fathom like not being excited to be there and be all in when you are playing.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think that passion definitely shines through when you're like so focused and determined that you'll do anything to get as far as you can. And other kids, it's just like, well, I guess I'm going to go home with that box of nerds that I've seen on TV.
And well, for us, we didn't even know at the time, but they did read us also before we walked in. They had the legend on a piece of paper, and one of the producers read us the legend before we walked into the studio. So we heard the legend twice. We heard it once read by the producer, and then we went in there, and then Olmec read it again.
Mm-hmm. That's good. At least you're somewhat familiar with it, so it's like priming you to answer the questions.
Yeah.
Versus just like being shell-shocked by, wait, I have to do history now? I thought I'm here to play games.
Mm-hmm. Well, some of the questions too, you could tell like there was like questions like Bloody Mary. There's questions that didn't relate to the temple, which is a little less likely but that's because I rang in on all the good questions and screwed it up. So like by the time they're showing those, they're reaching into like the grasping at straws of some of the questions. But like I said, there were a lot of questions that I made useless.
Olmec's probably like, what is with this kid?
Yeah, this
He's
kid
ruining my questions.
That's like they literally changed the rules, I think, because of that.
And shout out to the Blue Barracudas in the scene because they went from dead last. Everybody had moved up at least a step or two, and they went from last to being in the final two to go into the temple game. So shout out to them. That was really
there's
impressive.
no reason that he should have not beat me. Like that kid was. Jordan, I think it was his name, and I still remember. I'm like, man, he was a competitor. I 100% thought I was going to lose to the Blue Barracudas. So.
Well, on that note, let's head to the temple games to see how.
Well, first we have lunch. It was
right.
Pizza. It was Pizza Hut Bigfoot Pizza. Once again, aging Bigfoot Pizza. Google it. It was.
I know exactly what
nothing
that
like
is.
getting a big, greasy Bigfoot pizza before going to compete.
Pizza Hut has gone Hollywood. With a blockbuster Bigfoot movie deal. Now, every time you buy a Bigfoot pizza, you get a coupon for one free movie rental at Blockbuster with any other movie rental. So make it a Blockbuster night with Bigfoot.
My mother thanks you. My father thanks you. My plastic surgeon thanks you.
It's a Blockbuster deal from Pizza Hut.
Did that make you feel like tired or logy?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, you're charged up. You're a kid, but it would now for sure.
So after we gobbled up our Bigfoot pizza and drank some Coke out of a straw, we head back to the studio for the Temple Games. Coca-Cola, I mean, not the other stuff. So I thought this was interesting. Nick, rather than me just read off my notes, do you want to talk about your mini interview of Kirk Fogg before the Temple Games begin?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's great. Well, first and foremost, this show aired. Yeah, this show aired, or it filmed August 10th, 1993. And I remember that for a very specific reason, is it was 6 days before my 13th birthday. And I remember I went to when we were there and we were and this is season one. I think season one is the only one where we actually got to do interviews. And they were like, this is not a good idea. Yep. We should not let these kids talk. I might have been a reason for that too. And, but they came to me and I remember I was like, hey, can I say I'm 13? Because when this airs, I'm going to be 13 I like the look that they gave me, like, whatever, kid, like you say you literally say whatever you want.
He says it in the shadows, like under a foliage. Listen.
Yeah. It's like, I thought I was being so like sinister about it, but they asked us, they asked us a couple things prior, like said, hey, what's a couple interesting things. And I was like, oh, I do these comedy skits, and I did like a little couple like talent show things, and then I was like, oh, I play soccer, but thank God they didn't pick that one because I didn't really play soccer.
That'd be more appropriate for guts.
I was like, so of course they went for that, and like when Kirk was there, and that was the moment that was obviously the first time like really meeting Kirk. I actually never saw Kirk. I didn't know who up until Steps of Knowledge. Like I didn't know who he was. I kind of heard someone. I didn't. I'd never seen the show, so I didn't know like anything about the host until Steps of Knowledge. But anyways, he was super cool. He kind of talked to us before, and he's like, "Oh, okay, I'm going to talk about this, comedy skits thing." And I mean, when the interview, yeah, I clammed up. I mean, I was I was like so nervous, as if you couldn't tell. But
That was some heavy stuff about a kid who felt the world was corrupt and
yeah, they just like kept letting me going. It's like when they put the microphone in your face and you're just kind of like, and then do you hear the one clap in the audience?
Yes, yeah.
It's like, I think it's like epic. And like, women are better. Woo!
That one guy, your comedy script really spoke to him. Yeah. You gotta put this in, Alex.
On the right over here, we have
Nick.
And how old are you, Nick?
13.
And I heard you like to write comedy skits?
Yeah, I like to do them and then enter contests and stuff.
What's your favorite skit?
Well, I did one where this guy was mad at civilization, mad at the world because everybody thought that women were better at cooking, so he tried to prove it, and it was really messed up.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's fun to look back at now, but at the time I was just like, and then with the big glasses, I think it pulls the whole thing together.
Oh yeah, totally 90s. Hardcore. I love it. I love it though. It's cheesy in all the right ways. So for the first temple game, we have Crown 6 Queens, and then second was Maneuver the Forest, and third is Transfer the Cloth.
So it was an interesting story about the temple games when we saw them, the two individual ones. So there was the one with the bubbles where they put Mr. Bubbles down, the one that I ended up doing, and then the one with the bamboo stick. And I made it very so I made a deal with my partner because we both wanted to do neither of us wanted to do the stick. We're like we both want to be on Double Dare, and that was the closest thing we were going to get to Double Dare was getting to run around those bubbles on the thing. So I was like, you know what? If you let me do this temple game, I'll let you go first in the temple if we make it there. Remember what I said earlier? I thought Jordan was winning. I didn't think we were making it to the temple. I just wanted to do the bubbles. Right. So we did. So that's why that's how we chose. Is we both wanted to do the crowning the queens or kings, and I made the agreement, and that's also why she ended up going first in the temple, was based on that deal.
I love that you actually knocked over Kirk Fogg. Well, pulled him down, I should say. But that just goes to show how slippery these kinds of things are.
Yeah, he took a pretty nasty spill there.
Yeah, surprisingly they didn't edit out a couple things that you thought they would, like me pulling him down, but then I feel like leaving him hanging on the high five was like right before right after we won and we were going to the temple, and like it's like the famous I'm like, wow,
go to the next temple game.
And you probably had no idea when you filmed it, but when you watched it, did you notice it then?
Yeah, no, absolutely, 100%. Yeah, like I said, it's right after we win the final temple game, and we finally were going to temple, and I was just so beyond excited, and I just went right for. Apparently, I looked like I was attacking Shay, but I'm like, and like all over, but I wasn't even like looking at Kirk, but he was like, he put his, if you haven't seen or didn't notice it, it's worth the watch. It's kind of like the bigger things that talk about, like him falling on his butt and leaving him hanging. Yeah, Kirk was on that first season too. He was like, I'm not saying like he got work, but at the same time, he was just a young guy. Like, I think it was like his first big, so he was having as much fun as the rest of it. Like it'd be like if one of, you're like, that's like being a host of a Nickelodeon game show is probably just a lot cooler than even being a contestant. So sometimes people have asked like, oh, was he mad? Like, he was like a 20-something-year-old kid. He was just having a blast. He was living his best life. Like, I don't think he was sweating any of that.
And going back to the thing where you had made mention of you're surprised that they didn't cut out some of the things. Those things is what helped make those shows so memorable.
Yeah, absolutely. It was fully. It was like real time. Everything was shot like in real time. And I know it's jumping ahead, but even like at the end, like when I jumped out of the temple, like there was no time to react. They're like, get to Kirk. Like they like ran over to like get to him to like do the wave goodbye, because everything was timed like live, like a live show.
Unless something really messed up, like gameplay wise, rules wise, or calling the wrong winner, like they never stopped. So that's why so many like slips of wording, like tongue twisters, like things you'd think they would reshoot. They were so tied to those 4 shows a day and trying to do it within the Universal Studios park hours to have an audience there. And so they made that pressure on Kirk the first season, especially when he had to do the rules, and then they finally gave it to Olmec season 2 and 3, but he had a lot to do in the first season.
They were even setting stuff up, like you'd see him like they're like getting us ready for the game, and he's like, okay, looks like we're just about ready. They're
Right,
okay,
right.
they're coming out.
You
So
can
it's like
hear him
literally like
stretching.
they're airing, like they're airing like as we're getting ready. Like that's stuff that would never, exist today. Like where it's, like they're there, but it made it so like just made you feel like you're there. Like you said, it's part of the charm of like the original and those types of shows. They were so like real. Like it wasn't.
Yeah, it was transparent.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it made you feel like you were there too, which is why a lot of
it's like
fans...
I can do this. That's why every kid watching, like I can do it. It wasn't something surmountable. Like I could get out there and kill it.
Exactly.
If they can't do competitive things, at the very least, they know they can leave someone hanging on high five. So like Nick's episode just has so much
it's a special
that you
kind
can
of
build
talent.
to.
Yeah.
Right. Cool. Well, let's move on to the temple run then, because as we know, Silver Snakes won the temple games with 1.5 pendants.
Yes.
Cool. So
shocker. That was a shocker because if we watched in our final temple game, we didn't know. Like we thought we were struggling because if you just watch us, because we're only focused on each other, and we're butting the heads. And there was a couple that we, like a time when we weren't transferring, it took us 2 or 3 times to get the one. So we didn't think we won at all because we weren't even watching. We didn't realize how much they were struggling at all. And right after that final one, like they had them like holding up the cloths, and it kind of clicked. And that's why I think there was so much excitement and leaving Kirk hanging, because it wasn't anticipated at all. It was a complete blindside that we actually won. We had no idea how much they were struggling on their side. We were just zoned in on each other.
Yeah. Shay had screamed with glee when that had happened as well.
Yeah.
And the Silver Snakes had 4. That means that the Silver Snakes...
Which further goes to prove your point of how real...
Shocking. It was shocking. We did not expect it at all.
Moving on to the temple... What was your strategy going into the temple? And you want to walk us through like what happened with you and Shay and just kind of like what it was like to be in that moment?
Of course. Yeah. Well, so they toured us through the temple, they take us through each room, show it. But once again, never seen the show. Season 1. I had no idea. This is like, it's like going through, like, how on earth are we're going to remember this? I was doing my best to like remember what everything was in the room. And one side note, and this is kind of the interesting, I didn't know what a seal was. It was Henry the Great Seal. I had no idea. All I could think of as a kid, like, or like a seal.
There's your Jade Seal, Alex.
It was, so I'm kind of like the whole time too, I was like, and I was so nervous to ask. I never asked. So, and I also never asked whether the temple, I didn't know if the item would be like hidden, like finders keepers, or if it was just going to be there. And I never asked. And that was something I took into, I was like, but if I ever get the chance to do this, I would just ask questions, because in the back of my head, I'm almost like, if I show up, I don't know what to do. I don't know what I'm looking for. And I never asked the question. So
one thing to your earlier question, what you learned between the first and this first episode.
Ask. And we did. We asked a lot of questions.
Good.
On the reboot about the games, because we don't want to go in blind. But yeah, they tore us through it. Once again, not having any idea. It was like the strangest thing. But it does actually feel. I mean, it's big, but it also like is kind of. It feels smaller when you're in it. When you're But we went through all the rooms, did the tour, then we went back to the green room, and he goes this piece of paper, and it has all the rooms like in it, like a map. And he goes that and a marker, and they're like, okay, well, you guys sit here, you guys can strategize your path. And I remember we sat there, and Shay and I looked at each other, and we're like, well, if one door doesn't open, this whole thing is worthless. So we kind of threw the paper and went watched MTV and just hung out, because we didn't even do it because we thought there was no point, because we knew that there was the path would kind of be dictated or thrown completely off the course. So that was the extent of so in the interview before we go in, you can see like Kirk's like, oh, what's your strategy? And we had the one thing we did agree on, like I said, Shay was going first, so that was because of our previous deal, and that we were going to enter in the Cave of Sighs. Ironically, because we thought that if we went at the stairs, there's a temple guard. We had no idea that they would even put a temple guard inside there. I will say that before we filmed it, like before when they were placing the temple guards, they already knew which way we were going in. So I'm throwing it out there that they already said that we knew they were going Cave of Sighs. And then I remember we were standing there, that the producer had his our back was to the temple, and he was standing there, and he had like sunglasses or something on. And I remember he was joking, like, don't look in my sunglass, don't look at the reflection, because they were like placing the temple guards. And so anyway, so that was that piece. But then when Kirk interviews Shay, and he's like, oh, what's your strategy? Oh, we're gonna go in the cave. And then he's like, okay, and then what? And then she's like, are you gonna go up or you gonna go down? She's like, no, up or down.
So I gotta find out, which way are you gonna go, Shay?
I'm gonna go up the cave.
And then where are you gonna go? You're gonna follow the bottom area, or are you gonna go up to the top? What are you gonna do?
Up and down.
Up and down. We're gonna see if she can go and get to the seal by going up and down.
Right. You don't want to give it away so that they would like screw you over.
I remember, like I said, when I went and then she went first, and she did pretty good. She had a good scare. She had a good scare. I think we had some of the better scares. One where she almost fell down the step, like
in the heart room.
Oh, there's another one. Nick's gonna have to go now.
A couple chances we could have owned Nickelodeon Studios,
Right.
but we. So then when I went, like I said, it was like that was the most out of body experience up until that point in my life, like that you would ever imagine. Like any other part, the temple games, steps of knowledge, moat, nothing. Like that was it. Like I said, you run, crowd cheering, pop of the crowd, the music, you leap in. And I still remember, once again, like yesterday, which is insane, but every room I step into is immediately in my head, please no temple guard, please, because I only had a temple guard. And all I kept thinking every time I went to a new room, please no temple guard, please no temple guard. And then I was going through and I had no idea how good I was doing on time, because I remember before they were like, oh, you get 3 minutes.
But how do you know what that feels like when you're
well,
in
we're like 3 minutes. That's what it like to keep. We're like, that's no time at all. And so I had no idea. I didn't know what was going on or how much time I had. But like I said, no temple guard. And then of course, I mean, you kind of know what happens. Like, and I was so zoned in. People are like, oh, you got scared of the temple. And of course I did get, I mean, the only one to ever get scared out of the temple. That never became a big deal until years later. But it was because it was a jump scare. It's like if you go to Halloween Horror Nights or something like that. So it doesn't mean like you're scared, like it's a complete, you're zoned in, and all of a sudden he just came out of nowhere. And I just jumped back. And then, like I said, as soon as I jumped out, the producers were like, oh, yo, go to Kurt, which I'm kind of cool. Cause if I got it pulled back behind there, I wouldn't have been able to go like do the whole goodbye thing.
Right.
But it wasn't until years later, like the show's done, it airs, and then however many years later it comes back on Nick Gas, and then like all these fan sites pop up and these little communities, and then they start talking about how, oh, he gets jumped out of the temple scared. I didn't even realize up until that point, I'm like, oh, I guess I did jump out of it. I didn't think about like it was a big deal. I just jumped back. And then they were like, then there's other stuff where like, oh, well, he would have been disqualified. But I don't think that's the case at all. I think they would have just had me jump back in and restart. I mean, like there's been episodes where a kid, like they drop the silver monkey off the side and they'll throw it back up. I mean, they wouldn't have disqualified us. They honestly probably would have paused and just said, hey, get back in, if I would have been spooked out of it, but and edited it and did a cutaway to like Shay and Kirk or something like that. But yeah, that's what I assume would have happened. But
that's a fair assessment.
Yeah, it became a bigger deal. It became a big deal later, and then it was kind of like the thing, like, oh, you want to get scared of the temple.
It was a meta Legends moment for sure, and a highlight of the series.
I think we realized it was a big deal when he was on a Stickly retrospective on Nick Gas, like best temple somethings, and it was
best episode. Yeah, that was the coolest thing.
Out.
That was probably a highlight of my thing. It's like Stickly did like his best episodes, and like I think mine was like rated like right up there, and I don't know why. I mean, obviously it's just goofy 90s kids being it's
happenstance of being on Legends, the happenstance of all the weird things that happen on the show. Yeah, I mean, there's no further credit than you can take just from being in the moment. It's just so fun to be.
Yeah, it's just a common human reaction, and that's not something you normally see in a show like that, because you're so focused on puzzle solving, and the screams always get a laugh.
Yeah,
like Shay, like, oh, they really got her, and then that's
it. Great, yeah.
But your reaction, which again was just pure instinct, was, oh, I probably would have done the same thing, and that's not something that a lot of people think of when they watch the show, and until much later, like, oh yeah, I would have done that. I absolutely would have done that.
Yeah, because those temple guards really went hard for that particular temple run. They like really jumped in your face and made sure they like at least spiked a little terror and anxiety in you.
Yeah, once again, not on the season 1 thing, but we did not know. I didn't know what a temple guard busting out was going to actually entail. Like, it's like,
yeah, it's just surreal. Five Nights at Freddy's eat your heart out. By the way, whatever happened to Shay? Did she actually get out of the temple?
Oh, you mean? I thought you meant in real life. I was like, I have no, like, honestly, like, there's been like, I've never connected with, like, I think after the show, like at the end of the show, we had like kind of exchanged numbers, but it's not like social media. So, and I think Josh and I were hanging out once, and like we attempted a call, and I don't even know if we got her, but this was like in the 90s still. And I don't know where. I know there's so many, like, there's such a cool community of like super fans of people who just like really love Legends, and they've kind of like, I've even seen like on some fan sites, I'll pop up and they'll do things, or some have reached out and like connected on social media. And but then there's been a couple that they'll ask that, or they're like, I've been trying to find Shay on social media or stuff like that, and apparently like they can't. But I don't know, I'm sure she's doing great and not living, having a midlife crisis, just like clinging on to her past like us. So she's like, they've moved on with their lives, we're still we're traumatized.
Considering that we've previously talked about how, well, we theorized that maybe the skeleton in the dungeon could have been a previous like temple guard victim. I think I might have found her. Hi guys, how you doing?
She is.
Why'd you leave me in the dungeon?
No.
You are supposed to get the seal.
Gory, Nick, I'm leaving.
How did you not see the other half hanging on the? That's the other thing. The super fans like going down the steps of the dungeon. Apparently, that's where the other half of my pendant was, on that ladder.
Yep.
And like they found it on camera, so I'm like, I didn't even know what I was looking like. I couldn't even.
Yeah. I mean, in that instance, you would just have tunnel vision and not even notice unless they said something beforehand, or at least pointed it out.
They did say it was hidden in there, but like hidden, like once again, I didn't even know where what the seal would be. I wasn't looking for things. I was just hyper focused, like you said.
Yeah. Why did you sell that Bushnell telescope? I wanted that. All right, Shay, take a break. I think you're a little too rowdy for us.
The mystery is solved. That's why she is nowhere online.
I found her remains in the dungeon after episode 8 was recorded and released. So with all the crazy antics that happened for this wild episode, what do you guys want to give for a rating of Henry VIII's Great Seal?
I'll go ahead and jump in there. I love this episode. There are few quote unquote bad episodes. I mean, there's some where the temple run was less than stellar, but the episodes as a whole are usually really, really fun. And this one is no exception. And just for Nick's pure gut reaction, I give this an S rating. I give it splatterific.
Awesome. I'm going to give it an A, which is splatsulent, because I really enjoyed the Steps of Knowledge, where like it felt like it was neck and neck for most of it, at least between the Silver Snakes and Blue Barracudas. I really enjoyed the Temple games, but I wanted like some more. I don't know. Sometimes the Temple games are hit and miss to me based on how they're designed. I tend to like more of like the physical ones where you have to like climb an obstacle course, or like, go through a bamboo forest, or like something with giant floating boulders. This was mainly just like a mat where you had to like put crowns on some mannequin heads. And then I think one of them was like that like blue tarp thing where the two had to meet each other and like transfer
the pieces of felt. Well, you didn't think that was cool?
No, I thought it was pretty cool and challenging. It just wasn't like visually
Velcro and felt.
Yeah. Sometimes I felt myself drifting into the temple, like, okay, I'm ready for the temple games. Come on. So, that being said, I did enjoy like the competition. Everyone was pretty much really into it who got to the end. I love the temple run. Even if you guys didn't end up getting the Great Seal out of the temple, just watching you go through it and, avert the temple guards to the best of your ability still made it enjoyable and memorable. So I got to give it to you for that. A is not a bad grade by any means, by the way.
It's all right.
He's upset.
A little bit, No, like, I don't know how I could never even rate my own episode, because it's like, to me, it's just cringe. It's like you're watching,
home video. It's so S because of that, though, because Legends is already rewatchable, but once you've seen them all, it's always going to be rewatchable. But then every now and then you get some weird thing in the episode, like Kirk falling, or the missed high five, or him jumping out. The final episode of season 2 is when Olmec was like, Shrine of the Silver Monkey.
Yeah.
All these weird things are like, wait, that got passed. And so for the sake of the rewatchable value, on top of it just being Legends and awesome already, I'm gonna go with the S as well, the S score on this one.
High marks.
I expect the same for my episode.
Nick, do you have the courage to rate your own episode, or would you rather just rate Josh's episode? And he's
I think I'll abstain from rating my own episode.
Okay. That's
rating on
fair.
an episode, it's like, but yeah, you know, it's like I said, I would rate myself harder because because I don't have I haven't been able to fully watch my episode without, you know, like watching myself. So
that's fair. So
you'd be critiquing yourself more than the episode.
Yeah,
exactly.
You don't have to rate your episode, and Josh doesn't have to rate his, but
Josh
he probably would. I mean, you just mark him down for the S.
Okay, we'll give you not applicable then.
Abstainable.
Yes. All right. Well, that's pretty great marks, and you know we love Legends, so it's unless we particularly find a bad episode like the Discarded Seal of Ivan the Terrible, we're probably not going to give any Legends bad grades, like unless we.
That guy was like all psyched to be like on the show, and he's like,
you have no idea.
Like he was gonna.
You have no idea how frustrating that episode is to watch. It just feels like very heavy and stiff, like the temple run, the games, everything.
Oh, now I gotta watch it.
All right, I guess we got to schedule that for season 4.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's interesting. You talk about watching episodes. There's one. Was it the orange iguanas that we went against? I think. Yeah, it was the orange iguanas that we went against in the Reboot. She literally watched every single episode's temple games, in
preparation.
In preparation for being there, just to like try to get all the insight. But we actually, funny enough, I'm sorry, I don't want to go into something else, but when you talk about tips, when we were there, when we saw that our event, our temple game in the Reboot had the slingshot, Josh had a slingshot in his original, and he the first thing he said, he's like, Nick, don't get it twisted, and not like the like 90s. You know, he's like you got to keep it. He goes, if it twists, it doesn't work. He's like, you got to twist it, and that tip and him knowing that really helped us a ton.
So ask questions, don't get it twisted.
Don't get it twisted.
Isn't there like a Keith Sweat song or something like that?
Yeah, that was
Just making sure.
Or well, yeah, I don't think that's quite the name.
Yeah,
I think it's just called Twisted.
Gotcha. Well, that's awesome. We're gonna move right on to Josh's episode.
Which one are we gonna hear about today?
The legend of the Imperial Purple Robe of Empress Theodora.
All right, the Imperial Purple Robe of Empress Theodora, and the legend is set.
He was a green monkey back then. And also Nick was a silver snake for Henry VIII's Great Seal. And to signify that transition, I'm actually going to take my shirt off.
Turn into a different kind of podcast.
Look at him. Watch it. Take the shirt off.
I'm ready. It's Green Monkey's time. Don't worry, I wasn't bearing it all like I did in favorite 90s romantic moments. You don't have to worry.
Those are khakis. That looked a little nude on a quick
right
there.
Right, Legends of the Hidden Temple After Dark.
There's a lot more hidden than just the temple.
Ooh.
I do find ironic we're sitting in the Blue Barracuda shirt, because of course that's what we ended up being. Yes, but it's like I did despise the Blue Barracudas when we were like looking back on it. But I always thought they were the cool guys. That's why we wanted to be on the Reboot. Fair. But I was like, I always kind of resented them.
They were scary.
Yeah,
Barracudas are no joke. Each team has a specific personality about them, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Kirk Fox, by the way, is Silver Snakes. He said we're the scrappy ones.
Yep, so. Definitely. Some people say they're quote unquote the villains of the show, but I'm not really sure why. Mm-hmm. I know that they do tend to go head to head with Green Monkey statistically, like for like most temple runs versus like most artifacts taken out of retrieved from the temple. So they kind of have a natural rivalry going on there.
It's so cool that the internet over the years, how we've been able to rewatch the shows and compile those stats.
Yes.
Yeah. If you guys haven't checked out the King's Storeroom, which is like this Web 2.0 website, they got you covered. I research that all the time, and it just makes my inner academic squee with joy. Because
it blows my mind, the amount of love that is out there for such a such a random show, and so many other shows, I guess now too. But it's like even back in the day when I would see that, and every episode was analyzed and all kinds of facts and information and numbers and
they even got their own lingo. Like apparently a triple seizure is when all 3 temple guards hit you during the temple guard run. So people make it fun.
That website is very, very dated, which is both nostalgic. Awesome and yes, absolutely.
It's a relic of the internet past.
But awesome. It's definitely one of those. It shows you how much love was shown to this show, because this was at a time when they made that website when things like this really wasn't commonplace yet. So they really went above and beyond just to show dedication to a show they loved, and I have mad respect for that.
I agree.
Likewise.
You guys ready to move on to Josh's episode?
Of course.
Awesome. So the air date info I have for the Imperial purple robe of Empress Theodora. Say that 10 times fast.
You splashed us.
That's why I got this this pop filter.
It went out. It went out the side. Even Kirk is
the Imperial purple robe. Yeah. So the air date info we have for this tale is season 2, episode 11, and it aired on September 23rd, 1994. It was production code number 51, broadcast number 75, and completion number 50. So moving on right into the moat, which is the first section, one player has it to hold a wobbly timber while the other one walks across it. This is basically like the moat gimmick to cross. Once the first player makes it to the other side, the second teammate will have to make it across on their own. Josh kept struggling to get across, and it was down to the blue barracudas, the green monkeys, and the purple parrots to hit the fourth gong. Purple parrots was making it steadily across, but at the last second, green monkeys power through it, beating out both teams. So in the end, the winning teams ended up being the silver snakes, the orange iguanas, the red jaguars, and the green monkeys in that order. Josh, do you have any experiences you'd like to share or memories based off of the moat crossing?
Much to the contrast of Nick's shoot day, this was the power and the epitome of editing for sure. We were there a long time. That dry ice layer of dramatic fog is gone. That audience is tired. Kirk is fed up, and those wooden boards are absorbing with water and sinking down below.
Yeah.
It was so fun, but I love hearing the Josh struggling part. That's all I remember from it. No upper body strength. I was tall as a kid, so in school photos they would hand me the basketball back in the prop days, but I was like, give me the big plastic crayon, please.
Yeah.
So
right.
anyway, I wasn't too sporty, although I did care. So yeah, that and another thing we learned from that, being such a fan of the show, it was such a backstage tour. Like I said, the moat, the gong buttons back in season 1 and 2 were upside down Rubbermaid bowls. Like I remember being up close to it and seeing it was a spray painted gold Rubbermaid. So just so you know, folks, the gong buttons are BPA safe, BPA free, dishwasher safe.
With everyone crossing the moat and drying off, we're moving on to the steps of knowledge to talk about how Empress Theodora conquered a war, essentially, while a rebellion took place. I have here in my notes, the legend mentions how the Emperor just ran around panicking in the castle while the rebellion started. The Empress, by contrast, stepped up to be a motivating beacon to her people through her brave words, helping her people turn the tides of the violent affair. Once the legend is over, the trivia competition begins. Red Jaguars got the first question right, with the green monkeys following close behind on the second question. Josh pulled through again on the third question, bringing them into the lead. Orange Iguanas got the fourth question, while Silver Snakes is still stuck on the first step. The fifth question led the Red Jaguars to tie it all up with the green monkeys. The sixth question secured Green Monkey's spot in the Temple Games, with Josh answering all the questions. The Orange Iguanas pulled from behind the Red Jaguars with 2 correct questions in a row. Green Monkeys and Orange Iguanas officially make it to the Temple Games. Silver Snakes didn't score, and Red Jaguars made it to the third step out of 4. So what do you remember about the steps of knowledge when you're going through that heated battle race to the bottom, Josh?
I gotta say, spoiler alert, his steps of knowledge story might be your most exclusive and probably maybe best story of the entire experience out of all of them. It's something a lot of people don't know happened.
We don't want to overbuild
this. No, not build it up. I'm just gonna build it up.
Well, I do have to say, Slimesters and Gackoids, you heard it here first on Splat Attack.
This is true.
Shameless plug.
I'm going to whisper it. Next to Olmec, I'll whisper what happened. Thank goodness what... Hey, Olmec. Yes? I want you to know what really happened.
What do you mean? You're telling me that what was on TV wasn't actually what happened?
Really, what happened was... Olmec, when we first shot the Steps of Knowledge, the 2 teams that had won, the Orange Iguanas, Green Monkeys, lost. So we were actually on our way changing. We were backstage changing, and the PA had run in and said, oh my goodness, Olmec had said something was correct when it wasn't. So we have to go reshoot the Steps of Knowledge. So we went back in to reshoot Steps of Knowledge. They fast forwarded, did some editing on that we can see on the monitor. So we didn't get to hear the legend again. They just redid all the questions. So the first time the red and the silver were the ones who won. So the fact that we won and the two that won lost the second time, they actually put them on a show later in the season.
Wow.
So if you, to Nick's point earlier, when he mentioned that we weren't the only ones who were on the show more than once, you'll see really, really tall red jaguars on one of the episodes next to a shorter like set of kids, like almost like there was like kind of a missing spot and they just could put them in. So thankfully the show was sweet and they got to be on the show again. But we were definitely emotionally spent by the time we even won the Steps of Knowledge, because we had tasted the sweet victory of loss as well. So it was a definite puppeteering of emotions being there that day.
Yeah, it sounds like the temple gods really shined down upon you with a twist of fate and some generous luck to help turn the tides and advance you to the temple games.
Goodness gracious, were we lucky. Yeah, I think they knew this lonely kid's got to impress his friend who was on the show because the guts lie didn't work out.
Right.
You know, it's interesting. The only fact that I know that story is the only reason why, like, I never say like, oh, we're the only two, who have done it twice. I do say we're the only two who have ever run the temple twice, but like knowing that we're like, technically we're not. In fact, I think one of those other teams ended up making it to the temple.
Yeah, the Silver Snakes ended up making it to the temple,
like to actually lost on the second time. So
right,
I think that's something kind of interesting that
so cool. Like,
could you imagine being the parents of the other team that had to go twice, because they're tired of sitting in that audience?
Oh yeah.
Goodness,
like,
yeah.
Oh, they won. Oh no, they lost. Oh well.
That's actually interesting. They must have come back a different day. Like now thinking about it though, they must have, because they already shot the modes, because that's how they shot. I mean, I'm sure you guys have talked about how they shoot all the modes, all the steps. They couldn't have gone back and I don't think they would have fired the moat back up.
No, that was all
more dry ice, please. We need a truckload of more dry ice.
Move the cameras back.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. That sometimes they have to change the outcomes just to like keep the show going, and that's why they have that disclaimer at the end too, after like the credits start rolling.
It was definitely a behind the scenes look at how it's all made, and so interesting and so nerve wracking all in one. It was crazy.
Well, even though luck helped you win the Steps of Knowledge, I think it was all brute force and determination with the Temple Games as we move into there, because it's Josh and Ashley of the Green Monkeys versus Lauren and Steven of the Orange Iguanas in this epic round of Temple Games. So in the first one, they have to conquer a mountain. The second Temple Game, they have a zipline trade. And third, they have to knock down rebel statues. In the first game, Orange Iguanas took an early lead, but the Green Monkeys caught up, tying the score 2-2, each earning them half a pendant. Game 2 proves that both teams are still evenly matched. Each keeps the same pace and has 2 ears of corn at the halfway mark of the 60-second challenge. The game ends in another tie with 3 ears of corn per piece, and each earning another half a pendant. Whomever wins the third game wins the right to enter the temple in this heated tie. Once the third temple game begins, the Green Monkeys knock the first statue at the 45-second mark and knock a second one down at the 23-second mark. Orange Iguanas have yet to score, lobbing most of their cannonballs too high, landing in either the moat or near the spotters. Thus, the Green Monkeys shatter the tie, fully armed with 2 pendants and ready to enter the temple. So Josh, what was it like to play all those different temple games with your partner there?
Oh, just as painful as watching it, as far as no upper body strength on the pyramid. And once again, the power of editing. Literally the first 2 games, Kirk's outros or the announcing of who won each game had to be reshot because he didn't see the confetti shoot on one of mine. So he had to reshoot his commentary off to the side, showing that I'd won and saying that I'd won. But then you see a shot of me at the end of the first game and I just look like all sad because I think that's when I thought I had lost. And same thing with the second one with Ashley ziplining. There's like a weird edit at the end. It's because they had to relook at the video because the other girl's Velcro wasn't sticking. And so they were wondering, because the assistant was helping put it back, does that count? And so once again, just being, and we were interviewed. So in the second season, we were actually interviewed, but it was cut out because I was about to mention how I love the production and just always been to behind the scenes. And that's what I told Kirk, that my special effect movies were my favorite and Terminator 2 was my favorite. And that's why the whole episode is like the Tenacious T2 team, because they keep calling us T2. It's
right. Yes,
our interview was cut out. So it kind of negated And then by
No
season
context.
3, they finally figured out, okay, just have Kirk summarize real quick, and then everything has context.
This is the tenacious T2 team.
So fun. I mean, the pressure was on for sure, because versus caring about the prize, I just wanted to get to the temple and go on that temple tour, because
totally.
I knew they were going to be walking the kids through and showing us certain rooms we knew were the same, like Silver Monkey, but other ones were new and different, like the crypt and all that. So yeah, that heat was on for sure, especially in the final game. And that's where we learned the life lesson. Don't let your slingshots get twisted.
Don't let your slingshots get twisted. We got to make a sure of that. Slingshots.
Which is interesting. I think a lot of the cool thing, like the edits and stuff, I think it just really speaks volumes to the just like the integrity of the show. And I just say it again because it's like over the last 30 years, you know, you kind of see every now and then those rogue, a lot of people will say stuff like, oh, it was fixed or stuff like that. Because I know, like Kirk had said, because I know they had the budget and like there's like stories about, oh, they were only let so many kids win and stuff. And I know they can kind of put where they put the temples or the temple guards. And I think it more or less made it harder. It didn't necessarily negate it, but like the gameplay portion, like all like the edits or like the redos is literally out of complete fairness, whether it was the reboot or the original. It's like just to make sure that 100% whoever wins, everybody's following the rules, and whoever wins is actually, you know, credited as a winner. So
right.
I always think that that's like the integrity of those games are so high. So I always get slighted if I ever see any sort of, you know, somebody kind of saying, oh, well, whatever it was.
Yeah, I think they're just saying that out of ignorance. They don't really know like the true behind the scenes of all that goes on, just to ensure that everything is by the book, and you know, we're doing every contestant justice. We're not like, you know, throwing them to the dogs because of a technicality. Like, we're going to make sure we check everything twice to ensure that who's meant to win ends up winning.
Thank you, Slimesters and Gagoids, for tuning in to Splat Attack's Legends to the End. Nick and Josh's Hidden Temple Legacy. Okay, enough of my bad Olmec impression. I'm not as good at this as Josh is. I do want to take this opportunity to tell Nick and Josh, thank you for taking the time to be on the podcast and sharing all that you have with us. Speaking of all that they shared, there is so much content that I didn't have the heart to cut any of it out, which is why instead of doing a 3-hour-long episode, we have split this in half. So make sure you tune in next week to hear or see the thrilling conclusion to the journey that these two legends had. And yes, I mean Nick and Josh, not the episodes that they were on, although they are very awesome. If you haven't seen the Reboot series, make sure you tune in next week, because this is a special event you do not want to miss. If you do enjoy our content, please like, share, comment, follow us on social media. You can just search for Splat Attack Podcast. It's pretty much on any social media platform. If you want to reach out to us and leave us your thoughts, you can find us on the socials, or you can send us an email at splatattack2021@gmail.com. Be sure to check out our bonfire page if you want to get that Jade Seal Fake Legends t-shirt, or some other fan-inspired Legends teams. Or if you just want a Splat Attack shirt or coffee mug, make sure you go to bonfire.com/store/SplatAttackStore. Also, if you love the episodes, you do not want to miss what we've been doing over on Patreon. We do live streams every month. We give early access to our episodes, give shout-outs to our patrons on the regular episodes, but probably our biggest thing is we have bonus episodes there that you are not going to find anywhere else. This month we did an episode on all of the Muscular Beaver episodes of Angry Beavers, and that was a lot of fun. As always, thank you to all of you, Slimesters and Gagoids, for all of your support and the various ways you've reached out to us. All the love to you. But for now, I'm going to drain the slime tank and get some much-needed rest in the green room as I feed on some Bigfoot pizza and play some video games waiting for my turn back in the Temple games. Splat you later.
Reprise the theme song and roll the credits.
Hard to believe, folks, but it's time to say goodbye.
Nighty-night.
Hey, check us out next time for more adventure and another great legend of the Hidden Temple.
What'll we do till then?
Chill for a couple. We'll be back.
You're on, Nick.
And it was time for the superhero to move on.
I'd
declare this meeting of the Midnight Society closed.
Bye-bye. I told you they were tough and tenacious. Now we'll see if they can make it through Olmec's temple, retrieve the Imperial purple robe of the Empress Theodora right after this.
Hey, Kirk Fogg here, your guide to Nickelodeon's Legends of the Hidden Temple.
It's my temple.
Right, old Mac. Anyway, every show's a different legend.
I decide the legend.
Kids have to cross the moats, answer questions.
I ask the questions.
Whatever you say, no neck. Next are the temple games, and then the run through the temple.
It's my temple.
Watch the first game show that lets kids live out legendary adventures. Watch Legends of the Hidden Temple today at 6:30, 5:30 Central, only on Nick.